Hi there and welcome to this 2-minute tips video, and today we're going to be looking at the max continuous release option in the Z series cameras. Now with some genres it's almost a necessity to use continuous shutter release. You know, things like where you're shooting a fast moving dancer or sport where the subjects are moving around a lot. And with the Z series cameras, you know, the Z6 shoots up to 12 frames per second, the Z7 9 frames per second, and the more modern Z6 Mark II is shooting up to 14 frames per second, and the Z7 II up to 10 frames per second. So at full tilt, you create a lot of images which fill the buffer, they fill the memory card, and can be a real challenge when you're selecting the right image from the number of images you've captured. Equally, if you're using the mechanical shutter, that shutter is going to be opening and closing up to 14 times per second, and that can have an impact on the shutter. And therefore, what Nikon have done is they've limited the maximum number of shots that can be taken in any one burst to 200 in certain situations, and that's most likely to protect the mechanical shutter. So max continuous release allows us to set a maximum number of shots in any one burst that is lower than 200, and it can be quite useful in certain situations. So let's look at how we set it up. We go into the menus, we go to the custom settings menu, we go to option D, shooting and display, and D2, the second one down, is max continuous release. And if we go in here, it's very simple. You select the number of shots that you want to be the maximum in any one burst, and you hit OK to lock it in. Now, scrolling from 200 to 1 can be quite a challenge with the multi-selector, so do take a look at the earlier video we did on customized control dials, because that allows you to set up the rear control dial to allow you to adjust the settings like this really quickly. But to work out whether you want it at left at the 200 shots in a burst, or you want it down at a lower setting, you need to think about the context of the shot that you're going to be looking to take. Because what happens is, if you set it to say 4 shots, when you press the shutter release and hold it down to take a burst, after 4 shots it will pause and won't carry on until you release the shutter and depress it again. So thinking about how many shots you're going to want in a burst is going to be really important, because if you shoot 4 shots and the 5th one is the one that really nailed it, you're going to have missed that shot. Equally, if you leave it set at 200 and you perhaps you hold the shutter release down for longer than you want, you're going to have a lot more shots to really look through. Now, I have mine still set at 200 for most situations. However, in some situations, capping it down to 100 or 50 is going to be more than adequate. Now, there are a couple of notes that go alongside this functionality. If the buffer runs out before you get to the number of shots in your burst, then it's going to slow down, as it would anyway, because the buffer is filling up. Equally, it doesn't affect silent shooting mode, because silent shooting mode in a Z series camera is using the electronic shutter, so it's not using your mechanical shutter. So if you set it to 200, it will carry on past 200 shots, and it doesn't come into effect when the shutter speed is 1 second or slower in shutter priority or manual mode, because again, I guess Nikon are thinking the shutter is not going to come up against any issues when you're only shooting 1 shot per second or less. Equally, it doesn't affect time-lapse, because this is seen as a series of individual shots, so not a burst, and doesn't affect the mechanical shutter in the way that a rapid burst of shots does. So whilst I've seen some comments around the fact that Nikon is in effect capping the number of shots in any one burst to 200, I don't come up against that as a real limitation on the kind of shooting I'm doing. Is it a limitation for you though? You know, let us know in the comments below. It'd be interesting to hear if any of you have come up against this as a limitation. As always, I hope you found this video useful. If you did, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and you'll be notified of future videos. And I look forward to seeing you on a future video.